This is the Real Influencers podcast, real influence for real estate agents. So I'm super excited today because we've got one of the country's leading trainers and coaches joining us on the Real Influencers podcast. Welcome, Caroline Bolderston. It is awesome to have you here. Thank you for giving us your time today, and I can't wait to hear your insights and your thoughts about the real estate industry. And to get us started, I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everybody else. How did you get into real estate? What happened?
So I got into real estate, nearly 17 years ago now. And in a snapshot, I found myself at sort of 33. I'd had a relationship breakdown, sold a house in Manly, and I was in a position where I had like 40 grand to my name and I had to do something quickly. And so because I bought and sold property, I was fascinated by the industry, and I thought, you know what? I think I need to get into real estate because I realized I had to get my act together big time. And so I reached out to the agent that we bought through, and then they gave me a start, which was amazing. First National was the brand here in Manly. So pretty traditional brand. To condense it all, over the next 10 years, we were taken over by McGrath. They basically bought out the First National franchise, so I became a McGrath agent, which then made me transition into being an auction agent, which was phenomenal for my career. And then I made the move to Bell Property to sell for Bell Property in 2008. So at the end of 2011, I was the number 2 sales agent for Bell Property nationally, Australia-wide. And basically what was happening was the CEO of Bell Property had invited me in over the previous 12 to 18 months, I guess, to deliver little training sessions for the Bell agents. And I found that I really loved it. And so he kind of planted the seed. You know what happens when you kind of sow a little seed and you get thinking. And he said, look, if you ever feel you want to break or you want to take a step back from the coalface, I'd love to create the Bell Property Academy, so an internal training platform for training and coaching. I headed up the Bell Property Academy for 5 years. And so over that time, built, an academy of 7 people. So we had a full-time graphic designer, we had an operations person, then I had several full-time coaches and trainers. And we'd built a paid coaching model within the brand. And so at the end of 5 years, I felt it was time for me to hand over and go off and do my own thing, to be honest, because I loved working with the Bell Group. It was phenomenal. But I just found that I wanted to stretch my wings a little bit and see what else is out there and get to work with different groups. So I set up my own business in March 2017 called Being Bold. And so it's been, 2.5 years now since I've been coaching independently. And it's just, I've been really blown away, Marcus, by the support I've gotten from the industry as a whole. And I've been so fortunate to be working with so many different brands and different groups, whether at a corporate level or individual agent level, or a principal's asked me to come in and work with their team for a year or 2 years or 6 months, whatever it might be. And it's been just awesome, to be honest, being able to do that. So yeah, I'm 2.5 years into the business and busier than ever, to be honest.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations. That's absolutely brilliant. So do you have an area that you specialize in with regard to the kind of content that you deliver?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because I've been a high-performing sales agent and I ran a team under me and all that sort of thing. I can pretty much coach and train on all the fundamental real estate skills and practices because I've done it. So yes, I can train to all of that, and I do that. So whether it be auction or negotiation or building your team or structure and all that stuff. What I've found though, more and more over it's solidified over the last 12 months, is that I'm being called upon, or I'm noticing actually that there are three core areas that I, as a coach, I need to focus on, and I really need to uncover which one of the three key areas is holding my client back the most, if that makes sense. And those three areas are, for me, you would have heard something similar, no doubt, is mindset, action set, and skill set. Because, and in that order, actually, Marcus, because the skill set training and development and support only goes so far if they haven't got strength of self-management or their emotional strength in order to then convert over to that middle section, which is the action set. So I'm finding that if they don't have an empowered mind or are able to clearly see where they're going and what their limiting behaviors or patterns might be, all the skills in the world won't get them anywhere, because they're just not in front of enough people. They're not getting enough out of their week. So I really focus most in those two now, is about helping people get clarity of mind and strength. And then I'm really big on the structure piece. So my God, I can tell you, if I had $10 for every agent who either inquired or chatted to me at a conference or something who said, oh, I don't have enough structure. I'm just all over the place. My time management's terrible. I need more discipline. I need more accountability. Man, that'd be amazing. I'd just be able to sit back and do nothing, because that middle piece, which is the whole action set piece, the way I define it, that's missing for a lot of individuals. And once I get their mindset right and their action set right, I find the skills pretty much can take care of themselves often.
I totally agree. It is fascinating because one of the things that I discovered when I was a trainer too was
Mm.
this whole idea about people not applying what they've learnt because they've got some belief that says, oh, well, I'm not a name the
Mm-hmm.
thing they're in the room for, really. And I think that's such a fundamental piece that so many people miss out. And when you combine it with, as you say, so you get the mindset and the action set working together, I think that's a totally awesome combination. Caroline, question. You've obviously worked with quite a lot of the top agents. What do
Mm-hmm.
you think, and I presume it's probably leading on from what we were just talking about, what do you think makes the top agents so successful? What's their secret sauce?
Uh, I feel there's three things. And again, yeah, you're right, Marcus. It does, in my opinion, fall into the first two elements that I focus on as a coach. And the three things that I see are the big differentiators are the self-management ability, which is how they approach their need for responsibility and how they respond to everything that happens to them. I find that self-management piece, which is, it's got a few layers to it, but those who are quite evolved, or they've spent time on looking at their limitations and being willing to actually say, is my view of who I am really who I am, and actually unpack that and be willing to kind of look at it. I feel that self-management piece is huge for the successful agents. They know their strengths, they know their weaknesses, they work on their weaknesses, and they are constantly evolving, but being prepared to really look within to see what is it within me that's not translating or not working. And I hear it a lot where the agents say, oh, these clients, I can't believe it, after 4 years of me nurturing them, and and I've put all the work in, and it's like they expect something in return, whereas they haven't got that emotional strength to look at it differently. So that self-management and how they respond in those situations can be diabolical and very detrimental to their long-term success. So I think self-management is the first thing. The second area I feel is kind of more in the structure piece, which is focus. Those who know how to focus, I believe, are the most successful. And it's that whole ability to shut down all of the distractions, to know what I want to achieve over the next 45 minutes and be clear on it and focus just on that. I feel focus is a big driver of success. And the third thing I feel would be, language, I think. Internal language and external language. How people talk to themselves through all the moments that happen. My God, we all have our little inner voice, don't we? It's crazy. So I mean, we all battle with it. So I think it's the language. The successful agents appear to master their own internal language, and then they also have the ability to really develop a way to step into somebody else's world and speak their language, which is a lot of what you talk about, Marcus, with values and an enormous part that they play in our ability to influence or to be able to be in alignment with somebody. So I really feel that language piece. When I look at the successful agents, I think it's those three things.
And I just to echo what you've said, from the interviews that I've had already with some of those agents, a number of them, the pivotal moments in their careers where was actually when they stopped and they looked at what they were doing and they unpacked the thing that they knew was holding them back, and then they went, right, if that's not what I want, what do I want? And then how do I go after that? To the point where I was chatting to Marcus, and he's very focused. He said, look, I can make three types of phone call. I can make the easy call, the hard call, or the call that makes me money or connections or leads to another part of the process that I want to unlock. I always do option three. He's just very focused, straight down the line. It's very black and white for those top agents. They don't. It's fascinating to hear how they're doing what they're doing, and you have absolutely touched on that. Tim Heavysides talked about focus. One of the things he really talked about a lot was just focus. They all have. They're just like, be very focused on a task. There was a word he used. I can't remember what it was, but what it meant was just be super focused on a task, and just see that through.
Sorry to over talk you, but it's almost that single-mindedness in small chunks. It's powerful.
It's exactly what they're doing. You're exactly right. It's small chunks of very single-minded behavior, and that leads to small chunks of success. Even though you can't see it in that moment necessarily, it's just building, building, building. So what's the thing they need to do that moves them one step closer to the next opportunity or the next sale or the next win or whatever it happens to be? It's been really fascinating. So yes, absolutely right. With regard to the kind of, so you've been an agent, you've been out there, you've done the selling piece. Out of interest, did you have a favourite? So there's the sales bit, there's the negotiation bit, there's the auction bit. When you were an agent, did you have a favourite bit?
Oh, I've never ever been asked that question. I love it. So did I have a favourite bit? Look, I feel that the winning the business was one of my most favorite pieces, because I know how difficult that is when it can seem that as a potential, like as a vendor, you choose an agent based on a certain set of criteria. I started to see that it's hard for them to see the other set of criteria that they need to focus on in order to get the right combination of agents. So I found that winning the business was always, when you won a listing that you enjoyed the people, you knew you were aligned, you thought I'm the right agent for them, because you just knew they were the right client for you and everything you believed in was going to deliver their solutions to what they wanted. That was hugely rewarding, because you've seen clients make many mistakes sometimes. So that was brilliant. I loved that. And I loved auctions too. I think what I love the most is the pressure, now that I'm talking about it, because you're under pressure when you're in there pitching for the business. And, it's an expensive exercise, isn't it? I mean, my average sale price was, 1.3 million. And this was quite a few years ago now. So it's an expensive exercise to lose that. So there's a lot of pressure there. And the pressure on the auction day, I just found it fascinating. I loved it. I got so good at auctions where in fact, in 2011, I remember I had more one bidder auctions than anything else. And that's when you really need to be very highly skilled, and I still took them to auction. If the conditions were right, I might sell prior, but mostly I knew that I needed that auction environment and that auction process. So I've got so many great stories from the pressure one bidder auctions, but getting the deal done under the hammer. So I loved all of it. But I think, situations where I really had to be in the moment, making decisions, relying on my instincts, that's what I love the most.
So I think fascinating. And just to go here, I think from my interview so far, the most common theme is winning that listing presentation. The top agents really enjoy that side of it because everything kind of hinges on that in one way. Because if you don't win the listing, then you haven't got the listing. There's no sale. There's no negotiation. There's nothing that comes after that. And I think one of the things that's really interesting that you've touched on there is there's a kind of, when you get really skilled, you can be in the moment. You can step back from the, I'm trying to sell you here, or I've got to do this to you now, or you know what I mean? And you've
got to pull out this line now. And
yeah. You forget the process and you dance in the moment. And one of the things that enabled me to get there when I was training and stuff was obviously you've got to know what you're talking about. You've got to have the three things, the mindset, the confidence in your ability and all that. That's going to be the mindset, but you've got to have the behaviors that support that mindset as well. So that's going to be around your action set, but you've also you've got to have the skills, right?
Yes.
And I think one of the things that really enabled me to dance in the moment was when you have all of those three things, you can let go of the result.
Of course.
And you stop focusing on you and what you get out of it, and you start focusing on the other people and what their experience of this is and what they get from this experience. And I think for me, that was such a pivotal moment. It's so obvious to say, okay, and it does require those mindset, action set, and the skill set to all be built up enough so that you can actually stop and go, I don't need anything else right now. All I need is to be in the moment with this person. And in that moment, when you go to that place, you switch from making it about you and you make it about them. And then the whole thing for me changes in such a magical way because you're going back to being in service, which is where we started this whole kind of conversation about being in service to help other people achieve what they want to achieve rather than making it about you and what you want to get out of the deal.
Oh, completely. And it's an entirely different space that you then operate in.
Yeah.
It's entirely different. And it takes a lot of work to get there, a lot of work. And this is the thing, I feel, that action set, we talk about confidence. Well, what's the best way to have confidence? To make sure you've got plenty of pipeline listings coming behind you. Because when and I often comment, and in trainings and things, I say, the moment your business is operating the way it should be is when you're walking up to the front door and you're saying to yourself, I hope they don't want to list for another 6 or 8 weeks. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's when everything is where it needs to be. And so I've got all these formulas and things about how many pipeline listings do you need to have then in 90 days? And there's all formulas behind it based on your conversion rates, and it breaks it all down to how many conversations and all sorts of things. But that's when you can be in the moment, when you're not sweating on it. You're not going, I really need this listing. You kind of don't want them to be coming to the market yet because it just completely shifts the power.
Fantastic. Yeah. So when you think about some of the top agents that you've worked with, what are the kind of, I guess in a way, what are the things that they do or that you might encourage them to do to really secure those listings?
All right. So I think there's a combination of things that come together for the agent to be, I use the word obvious, the obvious choice. Now, it's funny because it's not necessarily what most agents think it is, which is I've sold more property on this street, I've got a bigger database, we've got a bigger network, all the real estate indicators, I guess, that agents believe are the reasons why I'm the right agent. I don't feel are the reasons you get chosen. Yes, I think your track record and your market share and all of those things support the conversation you have, but it's much more than that. It's an overall feeling, and it's like a gut feeling thing where people, I've had vendors say this. In fact, this is a great example for you, Marcus. I've had a vendor of one of my coaching clients call me because they were one of my vendors several years ago. And they called me to say, oh my God, we've just signed up with XYZ agent and we got talking about you and you now coach him. And I was telling him what a great experience we had. And we had this little chat. And when I asked her, I said, what was it that made you go that way? Why did you choose to go with him? You know what her words were? Well, she said, I don't know. I can't pinpoint it. It just all felt right. And so what I know is what happens here is the longer you're in market, and this is why we say real estate's a long game. The longer you are in market, yes, you've got your track record that you can then be drawing upon, but it's more about that added with what we've already spoken about, your ability to really uncover what is going on for your clients. And so often agents say, oh, I didn't even know they were getting divorced until after we settled. And that rings alarm bells to me because that shows me that there's a lack of trust between agent and client, and there's this defensive thing. So the really good agents, the way they're winning business is because of their skill, because of their track record, because of their ability, but it's more around the fact that they can really enter that client's world and speak to them on a level that instinctively just feels like they're on the same page. I don't know if I've even answered the question with that.
So you certainly have. So I'm going to take it back and use some of my language just so that I know that what I'm hearing is right. So I think the first thing you said, which was really interesting, were a number of things. You talked about trust and you talked about feelings and you talked about entering their world and you talked about understanding their motivation, their desire that they're trying to fulfill. Like, take the divorce example, for example. They're looking to start again. They're looking to move from transition out of one area of their life into a new area of their life where they can, where they believe that it's a better option and everything's going to be better and whatever. So if we take the first thing, I think trust. When you go in and you tell everybody how fantastic you are and you talk about all the property you've sold on the street, for me, the issue that agents have with that is it makes them look like everybody else.
Yet it's like agents rely on it because they don't know any other way.
Yeah. I think you need that. You need the knowledge. You need to demonstrate your market knowledge as an agent for sure. And I think that's a really important step because really what you're doing, for me, what they're doing in that moment is they're basically setting the seller up for the price. That's what they're really doing. And I think it's a fine line between building the trust, understanding the emotional desires that person's trying to fulfill, building more trust with them, helping them to see that if they go with me as their agent or you as their agent or another as their agent, then you will be able to fulfill those emotional desires for them. That's what I think's so critical in all of this. And go on.
It is the emotional desires, because I was just thinking, why? That's definitely what's going on, because why would I have been able to sign up my first listing 3 weeks on the job when clearly I don't know what I'm doing? I hadn't ever sold a property before. I didn't have track record. I didn't know all the ins and outs, yet I won a listing. What's that about?
It's about how you make the other person feel. It's about the experience you're creating for them in that listing presentation. And I think one of the things that's so overlooked is that experiential piece. Because if I go in and I make it all about you and I build the trust and I elicit your deep emotional desires and I show you how I can fulfill those emotional desires, so you feel good about me as your agent, and every other agent goes in and they go, it's okay, we've got this, we're all good, thanks very much, we have to go to auction because it's the best thing for you to, and you're going, well, actually, I really would like a private sale. No, it's cool, auction's the way forward, whatever it happens to be, right? Then what emotional experience are you giving them? Because as a seller, I'm sitting there and I'm going, do you know what? I've probably got maybe, I don't know, a month or 2 months working with this agent. If this agent makes me feel pretty bad in this first moment, imagine how I'm going to feel by the end of this very stressful process.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think we miss that bit. That's the fundamental bit. We buy on emotion. This is to point forward. This is what we do. We're emotional creatures. We buy on emotion. And I think the moment we lose sight of that and we really heavily focus on the features and all of that, that's an issue for me because it makes us look all the same and there's no...
Completely. Yep, you're right. Everyone's all the same. And then so, of course, they go back to deciding based on fee or marketing, whatever looks the cheapest, because you haven't been able to differentiate yourself on a completely different level. I totally agree. And I've just done a little coaching video on this, actually, that'll go out in a week or two. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And it's funny when you have an agent who is brilliant on the emotional connection side and really listening and with the purpose of truly understanding. And as well as they can then add to that the logical things that seem to make sense about, track record and ability, that's when the power comes together.
Yeah.
When you've got an agent who's got both. Here's the thing though, most agents are just going on the logical part of it and really not understanding the emotional part. And therefore, that's an easy transition to make, I think, if you just, focus on that.
Yes. Okay. Yes, 100%. Look, for me, we buy on emotion, but we justify with logic. I'm sure you've heard that 1,000 times. And when I first heard that, I'm like, I don't understand what that means. I get it as a concept, but what emotion do I have to sell to? Where do I make that connection? How do I make that connection? How often do I make that connection? And all of these kind of questions were really in my ears for a long time until I came across values, and emotional desires and how you tap into those. And you're right, when you create, because you have to create the emotional tension at the start of that listing presentation, and then you're going to talk about all the logical things. So the thing that we talk about in the Real Influencers is to start off with the emotional connection, and then you have to go, this is how we help you achieve that. And that's where the logic comes in, that's where the features come in, that's where all of the other bits and pieces fall into line. Because if you don't make that connection with me at the very beginning, you're kind of like, here comes your features again. And I'm just like, you're like everybody else. But when you connect with me and go, look, I'm only here to help you fulfill your desires, whatever, and you've elicited them in the phone call before you even get into the room.
Yep.
If you've done that, then they're sitting there going, oh my, this person really cares about me. What's the feeling they're getting? So then they can open up because they're thinking, well, if you care about me, I can trust you. And if I can trust you, then I'm going to share more information and give you the answers that you need. And the whole thing becomes a circle. And then all you're going to do is you're going to go, look, I think your ideal buyers are these guys and these guys and these guys. Let me show you how we're going to market to them. And then it all makes sense. And I'm sitting there going, I get this. I can see why I need to hire you now. You make me feel good about myself. I mean, I even wrote an ebook, which I haven't put out yet, and it was called Charisma Listings and how you use charisma to win listings, basically. And I actually put it straight in the course in the end. But one of the things I talk about is never make a seller's previous decisions wrong. Because
absolutely. My God, it's like, and agents don't even realize that's what they're doing.
No.
You're making me feel stupid. I feel like a fool in front of you. You're telling me that, oh my God.
Yes. And so that's the first point that we cover, right? Because if you make me feel bad about myself and the color choices I've made in my home or the bathroom tiles or whatever it happens to be, the
Oh,
location I've chosen or whatever, then I'm just
yeah,
sitting there going, why would I hire you again? I'd
yeah.
be crazy to hire you. And in fact, I laughingly wrote a little bit that just said, imagine you go round to a listing and you're walking around with the seller and they're showing you their home, and suddenly the seller stops and goes, oh my God, I didn't notice those shoes you're wearing before. Those shoes you're wearing are really terrible. How did you get away with wearing those in a listing presentation like this? And then he
Yeah,
goes, and that suit, mate, that suit's, it's a little tight, let's be honest. I know you've got muscles and all and you want to demonstrate, but it's really not working for you, because that's what you're doing to them when you go
correct.
round and you criticize them, and it makes you feel bad, and I can guarantee it makes them feel bad too. So,
Absolutely,
okay,
absolutely.
we've got to get through the questions. I'm sorry,
Okay.
Carol. Let me go here. Where do you see the market going over the next 12, 24 months? And what opportunities or issues do you see might be coming up?
So based on when we say the market, I guess I'll talk Sydney, and different. I've got clients all around Australia, and the markets can be very different at the one moment in time. But if you just look at Sydney, where I'm from, I feel that there's just a period of stabilisation, I believe, over the next 12 to 24 months. And it's interesting, though, I did hear on the news, which I very rarely watch, about there's a global recession coming and all of that, literally just last night. But I feel that it's not dissimilar to other cycles we've been through. And if you just look at whatever the major event in history, there is always a period of stabilization after any major event. And so we've had this big boom of an event. And if this recession thing comes in or whatever happens, there's always going to be a period of stabilization. So I think it's kind of moving sideways. I know here there's renewed confidence from buyers. There's more people showing up in open homes. Ultimately, I believe people can only hold back their needs, if they are needs, not wants, their needs for so long. And if you literally cannot walk up the stairs anymore, you're going to have to make a move. If you have a desperate need because you've got to move closer to your sick mother, you can't hold that back. Does that make sense, Marcus? So I think there's a time where after stabilization, things just carry on. People buying and selling. Now, what that does to prices, that's a whole different equation. But if we're talking about transactions and having available stock to sell, I feel it's going to be fairly, level and plateau as it is for a while, but things will still have to happen. There's no question. So then the second part of that was, what are the opportunities off the back of this, or the threats or something? Yeah, I feel that because of that means that it is a marketplace where agents with greater skill will do better if they've got their mindset sorted. They will do better because they will know what it's like to list and sell through markets where the heat is not there, and they will know how to create competitive tension when it doesn't naturally exist, and what they need to do with buyer conversations. And it does take a different skill level in order to get a buyer engaged, not just easily going, we'll just wait, we'll just sit back. So that takes a lot of skill. So therefore, the opportunities are for the agents with skills. And I feel those who don't have enough skill around that, if they are not skilling themselves up with either having a role play buddy or mentoring from a phenomenal agent or going to more training or coaching or whatever it is, if they're not developing those skills, the threat is that they will have to self-select out because they're just not playing the same game. And if there's less stock, which there has been, and I believe will maintain for a while, then they're just going to go very, very hungry.
Yeah, it's awful to say. I actually really agree with you. The landscape's getting more competitive, not less so.
Mm, mm,
And you've got three, maybe four agents going around for every listing meeting, and it's tough. It's going to get really tough. And
mm,
to quote Marcus Chiminello again, just really quickly, he made a really interesting observation. He said, I'm paraphrasing exactly what he said, but he basically
mm.
said, look, this is actually how real estate really is. We were just blessed to have an absolute boom for so
Yeah.
long. And the agents that he really talks about training a lot. He said it's an absolute priority. There's no ifs or buts about this. If you cannot skill yourself up, and it doesn't matter, ironically, where you go. I had an agent who came on the course, and he was like, I'm at a crossroads. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, I don't know if I can stay in the, I love real estate, but I don't know if I can stay in it anymore. And my heart really went out to him. And I said, what are you going to do instead? And he said, well, I might just go into commercial real estate or something else. And I said, well, look, let me just go here. The grass on that side of the fence is the same color as it is on this side of the
good
fence.
Advice.
And it's not an easy option to go there. It's a skill issue. It's a skill and mindset issue. So my question to you, Caroline, would be, what advice, if you could give agents one or two bits of advice, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think number one, and this is the biggest thing I see, is that agents need a plan. And I'm sorry, it sounds boring and it's not particularly inspiring. However, one of the very first things I do with any of my clients is set them up with their 12-month plan, and then we chunk it down to a 90-day plan. Simple. And the minute we do that, it changes everything. So you need a plan. And if you think you can operate a successful real estate business, being your sales business, without one, you're kidding. It's all just happening by accident, and it could easily all fall apart tomorrow. So that'll be my number one thing. And then I feel a big one is you need to, and this is actually a line I heard at ARIC this year, which I loved, which is practice more than you play, which is really what I've always spoken about, which is get skilled and role play and get good at what you're doing. So I love that. Practice more than you play. And I think there's a big shift that needs to happen. A lot of agents are having a lot of fun and just playing at being a good agent, but not really practicing it. And I guess the final thing is really, you don't have to do it alone. It is much easier with support. And I'm not saying because I'm a coach and you're a coach, go and get a coach. Find someone to support you and keep you accountable to your plan. Because human beings are brilliant at letting ourselves off the hook when we don't feel like doing something. So have someone to help you get through those moments of not feeling it, so you can take the action first. And then what happens is you start to really feel like it. So they'd be my, 3 or 4 points?
Three brilliant points, Caroline. Fantastic. Thank you, Caroline. That was totally awesome. It's a great pleasure to speak to you as always. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for your time today. Ladies and gentlemen, Caroline Bolderston.